You know the name, the cold voice, the calm smile, the refined cannibal who could quote Dante while plotting his next kill, Hannibal Lecter. But what if we told you, he wasn't just a work of fiction? What if the most terrifying villain in modern literature was based on a real man? This is the story behind the story, the inspiration for the monster behind the mask, the real-life Hannibal Lecter. In 1981, author Thomas Harris published Red Dragon, the book that would introduce the world to the brilliant and sadistic psychiatrist, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. But it wasn't until the release of The Silence of the Lambs in 1988 and the Oscar-winning film adaptation in 1991 that Lecter became a cultural phenomenon. Audiences were captivated and horrified by a character who combined intellect with brutality, culture with carnage. Yet Harris never publicly revealed the man behind Lecter, not until decades later. In the preface to the 25th anniversary edition of The Silence of the Lambs, Harris told a story. Back in the 1960s, as a young crime journalist, he traveled to Mexico to write about an American inmate, Dykes Askew Simmons, who had been arrested for murder and sentenced to a Mexican prison. But Harris never finished that story, because someone else caught his attention, a man whose presence would haunt him for the rest of his life. The man Harris met inside the Topo Chico prison was a physician, elegant, soft-spoken. He went by the name Dr. Salazar. When Harris arrived to interview Simmons, he discovered that the inmate had attempted escape after bribing guards. He had been shot by police while fleeing and would have died, if not for Dr. Salazar, the prison's medical officer, who saved his life. But something felt off. Why would a polished, well-educated man be working inside a brutal Mexican prison? Curiosity led Harris to dig deeper, and what he uncovered was more disturbing than anything he could have imagined. Dr. Salazar wasn't his real name, Dr. Alfredo Ballí Treviño. The man posing as Dr. Salazar was actually Dr. Alfredo Ballí Treviño, a Mexican physician from Monterrey. Balli had been convicted of killing his lover, Jesus Castillo Rangel, in a crime so brutal it made headlines throughout the country. In 1959, Balli and Castillo had a falling out. In a fit of rage, or perhaps cold calculation, Balli drugged him, slit his throat, and then meticulously dismembered the body. Reports say he used surgical precision to cut up the remains and pack them into a box, later dumping the parts on rural farmland. He was tried and sentenced to death, later commuted to 20 years in prison. Inside Topo Chico, Balli remained oddly respected. He ran the infirmary, treated other inmates, maintained a reputation as kind, gentle, even elegant. But underneath that composed demeanor, Thomas Harris saw something darker. Harris never forgot that encounter. He described Balli's small, delicate hands and intelligent eyes. The doctor had spoken with a refined elegance and answered questions with surgical precision. But what chilled Harris wasn't what Balli said, it was what he didn't say. Behind that soft smile was a man who had performed unspeakable acts and never once flinched. There was no remorse, no emotion, just logic, cleanliness, order, a monster in a white coat. That encounter would later become the foundation for the most iconic line in crime fiction. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Though Dr. Balli was never accused of cannibalism, Harris merged Balli's cold precision with psychological elements drawn from serial killers like Albert Fish, Ed Gein, and Andrei Chikatilo, crafting Hannibal Lecter into something beyond human. A predator hiding in plain sight, someone whose brilliance seduced the very people meant to stop him. In Red Dragon, The Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal, Lecter becomes a mirror, reflecting our fear of evil that wears a cultured smile. But Balli's real story is darker for one reason. He existed, and the system let him go. After serving 20 years, Dr. Alfredo Ballí Treviño was released from prison. He returned to Monterrey and reopened a medical clinic, treating the poor and elderly. Some described him as changed, a man trying to make up for his past. He lived quietly until his death in 2009. But others never forgot what he had done, how he killed the man he claimed to love, how he dismembered him with surgical calm, and how he had fooled the system, and maybe himself, into thinking he was reformed. To this day, no one knows how many people Balli might have hurt, or killed. Harris never revealed the doctor's identity during Balli's lifetime. Only after his death did he write the truth. Lecter's charm lies in contradiction. He's articulate but barbaric, caring but cruel, intelligent but monstrous. Psychologists have debated his diagnosis for decades. Dr. Balli offers some clues: his ability to compartmentalize, his apparent lack of empathy, his manipulation of those around him, his obsession with control. But unlike Lecter, Balli showed restraint. He didn't kill again, as far as we know, and yet, isn't that what makes him even more terrifying? Not a madman out of control, but a monster in complete control. Today, Hannibal Lecter is a household name. Books, films, series, memes, merch. He's one of the few fictional villains awarded a place among cinema's greatest characters, right next to Darth Vader and the Joker. But what separates him from the rest is this: he was real. Not fully, not literally, but real enough that a young journalist named Thomas Harris never forgot the man in Cell 2. Real enough that beneath the fiction lies a fingerprint. The fingerprint of Dr. Alfredo Ballí Treviño, the real-life Hannibal Lecter. Monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes they wear lab coats, they quote poetry, they offer you tea, and by the time you realize what they are, it's already too late. Hannibal Lecter was fiction, but his darkness, that was real. If this story chilled you, subscribe for more true crime documentaries where fact and fiction collide. Share this with someone who thinks monsters only live in movies. And remember, the most dangerous predators are the ones you never see.